Our next guest on the Migrant Mentor is Shani Raja. What can I say about this episode? It is just beautiful. An ex-Wall Street journalist, 1 million students online for his courses, and a cancer survivor. Let's learn more about Shani Raja. Welcome back to the Migrant Mentor Podcast. Today, we are honored to introduce a truly inspirational guest, Shani Raja. Shani's journey from an unknown trade journalist to a senior editor at the Wall Street Journal is nothing short of remarkable. He has carved out a niche as one of the world's top-ranked writing instructors, sharing his vast knowledge and experience with aspiring writers globally. But Shani's story is not just about professional success. As a cancer survivor, he has demonstrated immense resilience and strength, overcoming personal battles while excelling in his career. His journey through cancer was not only a physical battle, but also a deeply spiritual one, enriching his perspective on life and work. I've personally taken Shani's Udemy course, Writing with Flair, How to Become an Exceptional Writer. And it's truly an exceptional course. It's changed the way I articulate and communicate, transforming how I share my thoughts with people, especially on this podcast. He's also worked for prestigious organizations like Bloomberg News, honing his craft under the most stringent editorial standards. Shani's soon-to-be book promises to be a treasure trove of insights, drawing from his rich career and personal experiences. Shani's ability to make complex ideas simple, clear, elegant, and evocative has set him apart as a master wordsmith. Let's get into the episode with Shani Raja.
Great. Thank you, Shani, for joining us on this Migrant Mentor podcast with us this evening.
It's my pleasure.
Great. Thank you. So you have an amazing journey over many, many years. Tell us a little bit about the early years in the UK and some of the challenges growing up in the 70s, because it's very similar to my journey. But what did you see and get challenged with?
Well, when I think back to the period in which I grew up in the 1970s in London, North London, basically, the London I remember was obviously the grey skies and, coming from Sri Lanka at a very early age, from the sunny tropical climate, and then suddenly being in this kind of what seemed to me bleak weather was the initial shock that I had. But that later turned into what you might call a culture shock, because what we found when we came there, and as I was growing up and going to school, was that there were a lot of people there who didn't like us, and this was reflected not only in the classroom, where you would feel a little bit like a second class citizen, in the games that you'd play with people. Superman was at one point the thing, but you couldn't be Superman because Superman isn't brown.
Yeah,
for example.
Yeah.
And outside the school was even worse at times, because then you would go walk home, and at the time my mum and dad were out working, and I would sometimes have to walk home on my own. It wasn't far, but when I did, there would be kids hanging around in the streets, and actually that was a time when people would openly call you names, racial slurs, and not too many people would find that really, really offensive, as they might today. So I think there's a very different kind of environment in which, had I not had a strong-willed parents, I think, who came from Sri Lanka with a huge amount of confidence, self-confidence, I think without that I might have been easily crushed under the wheels of that culture shock.
So that culture that was imbibed in you through your parents probably gave you a good foundation to face, really, very similar to what I had, is being an odd person in the environment, right?
Yeah.
Culture.
Yes. So you got to remember, at that time, there weren't that many foreigners. So you would stand out a lot more.
Yeah.
And there was that kind of, it was just like people didn't really understand much about who and what you were. And they didn't understand your history or your culture at all. And many of them didn't care to. Of course, that's one side of the story. There were also some very wonderful people, English, British people who were very progressive in that sense, and actually, were committed to changing that culture, and eventually, I think, did to a large degree. But growing up in that environment did affect my self-confidence for a very long time. So I was very shy. I was very introverted. which I don't think was my natural condition. So had I grown up in Sri Lanka, I think I would have been far more extroverted, far more social. And I just kind of, I sort of remember when I was very young, I would enjoy playing the lead role in a play and sing to my heart's content, play the main character when I was like in the very early days when I didn't understand anything about what was going on. But as time went on, I began to go into a shell. And as I went through like what you might call high school, so primary school was like, that's when I was like that. And then I remember what happened to me, because I would look back and say, why would I love singing these songs and being on stage? And then slowly begin to crawl into this shell to the point where even at university, there were times when I was just very frightened of even speaking up in a class, very nervous about those things. And so, but it was a bit of a double-edged sword, because I had that influence from the society, but I also had the influence from my father and mother, who were very self-confident because they had already come fully formed, if you like. So they already knew their place in society and they were confident about who they were. I was like, I would come home and say, why do people hate us? Why did people say this? And I could not get a satisfactory answer sometimes, because my dad would just kind of say, you'll talk about it sociologically. The immigration and this and that. And for a 7-year-old kid, it's like, but why did they hate us? And I don't want to say everyone hated us. There were lovely people during that time as well. There was beautiful people.
Right, totally.
But it was pretty common experience for me to go out and be walking home from football practice and then seeing a bunch of kids start singing a song about, with racial slurs in it, and me just taking off and running. And them chasing me and me managing to get away and not feeling that like I had a huge amount of support around me. So, that's the kind of environment I grew up in. And we have to be grateful and thankful that things have changed. In London especially, it's not like that. I don't believe in any, in any obvious sense. There are more subtler forms of, I guess, prejudice. But it went a long way towards kind of stamping out that kind of thing. So that I think, and also the fact that there are many more immigrants there now, where it's actually a numbers game as well.
It is. And so how did you overcome that? Because, you say you were walking and you'd have guys, obviously I suspect it would have been the skinheads, that kind of era. So what was it what was that milestone where you thought, okay, I'm going to fit into this and grow myself, because that is really also something about perseverance as well.
It took me a while. I knew that I was quite good at school, and I had this, again, my father's influence. He was a very academic sort of person, so I could get through school fine through the education system. So I kind of envisaged this time when I would be in the company of people who were different from the type of people that were around where I lived, for example. So I had this kind of escape plan, if you like. And that kind of leads into my career choice, because my father at the time used to work for the BBC. And he would sometimes take me there to the, it's a place called Bush House, and it's like it's this place where all the BBC radio stuff was taking place. And there you would meet the kind of English people and other people who were very worldly. They knew about other cultures. They were covering news in different countries. They lived abroad. And so that kind of media environment, international media environment, was very appealing to me. So I saw, if I could get into there, I'd be among people who were much more accepting. And I think that was one of the motivations. I used to love going there because it was just this place that was buzzing with all this international aspect. And then I thought, I'd love to work in this kind of environment.
So that would have been the tipping point for you, right? To gain that confidence to then launch yourself, I suppose. Probably even even though it was a young age, it gave you the confidence, right?
Yeah, and it was helped by my teachers would see my potential as a writer as well. So I was often commended for my stories and my essays. So I started to build an identity around the whole writing project. And because my father was also involved in journalism and he understood writing, I had an advantage. I think back and I go, well, even before all of that influence, when I was about 7 years old, I remember writing a story, my first novel, if you like. And I'll be there, writing this story. And I remember the title was called The Talking Tree. And it was just about this tree in this forest. And these other animals would walk past and have conversations with this tree. It was all very lovely and very, the tree was wise and very kind and everything. And then I realized for me, it was a kind of escapism from the grim world that was around me, because in this world, everyone was lovely. Everyone was treating each other with respect. Whereas the world that I was experiencing was one where I was actually afraid a lot of the time to even go outside. So maybe the writing thing started as a form of escapism for me. And then I wanted to be a writer and an editor because they don't have to deal with anybody directly. You know what I mean? It's like not a customer facing thing. And I wonder, what part that might have played. I don't know. I'm kind of psychoanalyzing myself. I don't know for sure. But I loved writing. I loved the creative expression as well. But who knows what would have happened had I not left Sri Lanka.
That's quite fascinating, because it sounds like the introvert in you was expressing himself through writing.
Yeah, quite possibly.
So then, you had that sort of base in the UK and obviously the challenges. And so that then gave you a lot of resilience, right? So moving on to your career then, why, obviously you're saying that you chose the writing part of it, but how did that evolve into where you are today? What was some of the sort of key steps, the key milestones, the key inspirations, the key people that would have come into your life to get to where you are now?
Yeah, at some point after university, so I had studied international relations. Actually, at first I chose philosophy. My dad was a big influence there because he was a philosophy lecturer in Sri Lanka. And I started doing that, but then I changed to international relations because I suddenly got really interested in the whole, the whole way that the world was functioning. And I was worried I wouldn't get a job easily if I just did philosophy, which I don't know whether that's true or not. Eventually, I began to see that if I wanted to work for these mainstream news organizations, which was my plan, the BBC and these mainstream news organizations, I just needed to find a way of getting my foot in the door or getting some writing experience and stuff like that. So my strategy was to start from the outside in. So I would go to the fringes of journalism, like the trade journals, like just B2B publications about telecoms, stuff I'm not really interested in, right? But it would get me some credibility, a portfolio of work and then I was just going to go closer and closer to the inside, to the mainstream media establishment at the time, right? So I knew that you couldn't just go in because everyone wanted to work for The Guardian or the Times or whatever. So I just knew I just had to do it step by step, go in and in and in and in. And eventually that strategy worked out for me. And then once you hit one of the big targets, then the others will look at you as well. Because now you say, I've worked for the Financial Times. I've written for the Financial Times. So sometimes it would be just asking an editor to say, I work for this trade publication. And I would have written articles. Now I had a portfolio of stuff to prove that I'd written about telecoms. Then I could approach the Financial Times, for example, and say, look, I write about telecoms. I've written these articles. Could I write a story for you? And occasionally you get, you might get, you pitch a story to them. They go, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. And then you write that story for them. And then you get your name published. And it helped that the publication I was working for was affiliated with the FT. So there was an opening there. And then, so like that, I would strategically use my position to get closer and closer. And once they publish it, then I can say to people, look, I've written for the Financial Times. So I've written articles for the Financial Times. So Wall Street Journal, would you be willing to take a story from me? And like that, you build people's confidence in you as a writer. But the important thing is you do need to be able to write well, because that's again, because it's such a rare commodity that when an editor of a publication sees that someone can do that, it's like it's a relief for them because they realize, this person's got that as well as the journalistic skills, they've got the writing skills. This very light edit is needed rather than what's this, what does this mean, this question, that you know what I mean?
But do you think you are naturally good at writing, or do you think they say it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at something?
Well, I would read publications like The Economist, and I would be really fascinated by how well the articles were written compared to, say, academic stuff. And like you pick it up and you go, this is really boom, 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 so interesting from beginning to end. And it's hard to get that from, say, an academic publication, right? Yeah. But these writers knew how to do something. They knew the magic. So for me, I was like, I always wanted to know how to do that, to learn how to do that. And I thought I wanted to become excellent at this craft. So, because it was just pleasing to me. It wasn't just for a career, but it was like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful the way that this is written. So I would read publications like The Economist and marvel at how beautifully they were written. And it was just a class by itself. And I would aspire to write that well. So I was always like studying it and learning the art and the craft of writing, and that's what I now teach for people who because I eventually, through my journey as a journalist, worked for all these different organizations and cracked the code, if you like, of what this exceptional writing is. And then now I share that for those who want to learn and discover what that is, and then hopefully those who have a passion for that will be able to use that to further their career or just to express themselves.
Yeah, just coming back a little bit, Shani, in terms of and in the startup world we call it the market entry strategy. And often and typically South Asian parents are focused around, you've got to get yourself into a brand name. You did the opposite, which was sort of the non-brand names and work your way up. Just quickly touch on the driver behind that. What came through your mind? Because you didn't want to work for the big Financial Times just then, right? Or at the start?
Well, actually, no. I mean, I did want to. That was my plan. It was just the strategy.
The way you went to.
The way I went about it, because I just couldn't
get in.
I couldn't get straight into that.
And it was an elitist club in those days, I remember.
It wasn't very hard to get in.
Get in, cracking.
So you just had to prove yourself and prove yourself. But, I knew it would be hard, and I was just committed. I was committed to that plan, and I knew that I wanted this to work. And I think that's really important to understand. This is what I wanted to strive for, and I was going to strive for it no matter what happened. Right? This is where I wanted to get to. And then eventually everything started to work out for me. And eventually I ended up, in the sort of places. I wrote for The Economist and ended up editing for the Wall Street Journal, which is another, fantastically written newspaper.
Yeah, of course. How much of it do you put it down to luck? The right time, right place, phone call from out of the blue?
Yeah, because I was going to ask, how many times did you apply leading up to The Economist, the Bloombergs, the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah. I put it more down. I think you make your luck through your commitment.
That's
right. So another person may have given up after trying, asking the Wall Street Journal once.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay. They said no. I said, why did they say no? Okay, maybe it's because of this. Maybe because I don't have enough of this experience. Maybe it wasn't as well written. And now I can send it back to them and say, you know what, I've done this. And then they recognize and reward that kind of commitment, as long as you're not a nuisance. So you've got to know how to play that game too, right? Because you can't just, there's lots of people saying, please publish my article, please, but they have the completely wrong approach or off-putting approach. So when I was an editor, you would get people asking as well. But occasionally you get one bright side who you knew would be like, this person is committed, they've studied it, they've understood the craft, and they want to now meet you and find out what they can do next, to get to where, and that's often a good way of doing it, where you could just try to meet with somebody and say, listen, I'm just going to, just for 10 minutes of your time, just want to ask you some questions about how I would do this. Now they've put a face to the name. Now if they were impressed by you, then, even a year later, if you send them an article and you say, look, I'm really keen, they might look at it differently. I don't know how things work now. The world has changed a lot since I have, done that with the internet. Like, this is like even pre-internet when I was starting, right?
Yes.
But on the other hand, the internet has created a whole new realm for journalists and writers, because it's totally toppled the media establishment.
Yes,
and a lot of those publications have lost their reputations because better journalists outside have been able to show how limited their journalism is, and sometimes expose even, the fraudulent type of journalism that sometimes goes on. So the world has opened up, and that has created an opportunity for good writers who are journalists to build their own audiences and even get paid in different ways. Subscription newsletters, charitable donations, patronage, pay-per-view. There are different like business models coming up. But so there is a huge opportunity to become influential for the normal person in a way that wasn't available to me, because we had to go, if we wanted to be influential, we needed to be able to work for the Guardian, the Observer, the Times, the Telegraph, the newspapers. We had to join those organizations. Now you can go from the ground up, but it's not easy. I'm writing a book about this craft, and what I'm saying there is that if you want to crack that market, imagine the advantage you have if you can write as well as the people who write for those publications, like The Economist, like the Wall Street Journal. Because you could be a great thinker, or you could have some great ideas, or you could have some really important things to say. But if you do not know how to craft your words into something beautiful, elegant, evocative, comprehensible, then you're at a disadvantage. So in a way, what I'm trying to do is to empower citizen journalism. Say, look, if you're one of those people, because I don't believe that all the best stuff is coming from the mainstream news anymore. And a lot of it, it's like, it's not easy to always trust, who's paying, advertising, what advertising is involved, who's paying for what, right? There's lots of influences that we don't know about, potentially, in some areas. But the problem is that those people have had an advantage in that they are trained writers and editors. So what I'm trying to do is give everyone that power so that, we can all benefit
from creativity that people have.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess the question then becomes, how do you stand out? Because there's so many influencers or bloggers these days using the power of social media to broadcast their writing or their blog or their thoughts or their ideas in front of 500,000 people on their Instagram. So, and everyone's got the similar access to technology like OpenAI and things like that. How do you actually stand out from the crowd? Because back in the day, it was if you were a Wall Street journalist or a Bloomberg writer, you had the reputation, the backing of the newspaper.
That's right. And that's my point, right? I think the best way to stand out is not just understanding how to do good grammar or punctuation, but to know how to write with what I call style and flair, right? Now, when you are able to do that, and you can, what I say, create fireworks with your pen, right? Then people almost have to sit up and listen because it's that powerful. So to me, this is the way that you stand out. And even ChatGPT and stuff like that, it's good. Like, it's great for your basic stuff, and it kind of puts things in a competent way. But to really understand the principles of what makes a piece of writing crackle, and written by a human being in this moment, observing this particular thing right now and having something to say about it, and then being able to express their thoughts in the most beautiful way possible. That's magic, right? So the book that I'm writing about is called The Alchemy of Writing, because it's magic. And I'm trying to explain to people how to do that magic.
But I think that translates into so many aspects of life, personally. If you're looking to become a leader, and you're presenting in front of 100 people, 200 people, you need to be able to articulate your thoughts. Dad's a lecturer. Does his messaging and the way he inspires, is that coming across to the person to provoke the right thought of thinking for their own essay writing? Even in something simple as an email. Doing your course myself, my email writing has gotten so much sharper.
Yeah, I noticed. Totally. I mean, I think it's better than that. Like, I was reading your introduction, and I was thinking, wow, this is really well written. Like, I couldn't even improve on it. So it was like, wow, okay. So if my course helped you do that, then that's fantastic.
That's good. I've seen your course.
Right. And I thought this is my 4 principles. This is simple. This is clear. This is elegant, and this is evocative. And those are the things I look for. And you're right, in presentations, even in public speaking.
Yeah, you do that.
Simple, clear, elegant, evocative. That's what if you try and do those things. I've said this to people who are really good speakers, and they're like, yes, I've talked about writing, and they're going, it's the same for speaking. Yeah.
In the early stages of your career, did you think it was a formula, or did you just think you were super talented and you knew exactly what to write to get people engaged and interested in your writing?
Really good question. No, I didn't. I could, I could sense these things, and I was
You were good at it.
Yeah, I would just go like, well, this sounds better than this. This sounds better than that. And then when I became an editor for the Wall Street Journal, I was editing other people's stuff daily, like 3 or 4 or 5 articles, right? And I was just going, okay, improving this, improving that. Okay, that change this, change that. And I knew I was making lots of changes, and the thing would end up sounding much better, because then everyone would say, oh, what a great story, what a great story. And then my bosses in Hong Kong at the time, so I was working in Sydney, my bosses in Hong Kong for the Wall Street Journal would say, like, okay, you're writing some good stuff there, right, in Australia. Would you like to train some of our journalists around Asia? So Korea, Japan, Thailand, like they were English-speaking journalists, but they wanted to raise the standard of the writing. So I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, you seem to know what you're doing, because I'd internalized these principles. But when I had to go and teach people, I realized I was just saying, look, this is why I changed this, that's why I changed that, that's why I changed that. But there was no formula. But then I began thinking about how I'm going to teach this. And then I would study the changes that I was making as I go along. Okay, what did I do there? Okay, I made it more simple.
Right.
Oh, what did I do there? Yeah, I made it more clear. It was unclear. Oh, what did you do there? Well, it was a bit inelegant, so I made it didn't flow well. So I changed that. Oh, I made it more elegant. Oh, there, it was just boring. So I made it more stimulating. And then I would look at it and say, well, that's every time it would be one of those 4 things. Suddenly the truth of it hits me that that's all I'm doing. I'm making 4 types of changes. I just have lots of ways of assessing those 4 things.
Yeah.
And that's what my course became, was how do you make your writing more simple? Okay, here are 10 ways.
Yeah.
Clear. Here are 10 ways. Look out for ambiguity. Look out for vagueness. Look out for this. Look out for that. Simplicity. Look out for unnecessary words. Look out for, using like language which is unnecessarily, fancy.
Yeah.
Simplify that. Elegant. Look out for where it feels clunky. Evocative. Look for where it's boring. And if you try and assess your own writing, you often find that if you can use that framework to identify where you are lacking. So you go, okay, yeah, and most people could easily identify, say, oh yeah, I know where it is. My writing is clear, but it's just, it's just a bit boring, or it just kind of, it doesn't flow well. Then elegance is the issue for you. So now if you raise all of those things and you know how to turn the volume up on each of those things, then you get the optimum thing. And you have to balance it too, because sometimes it's like a bit of this is too much. You simplify too much and you lose some clarity.
If we take that now, you've got that great history, then you became an entrepreneur, effectively, right?
Yeah.
Because you then used your background, the cultural background, your experience that you gathered. And I sort of think of it like a Pac-Man, right? If you remember Pac-Man?
Yeah.
Right? Pac-Man, it goes and picks up the little fruits along the way. And then you've got the big fruit.
Yeah.
Which is where you're now.
I had no interest in business, even though I was a business journalist, right? I just wanted to work for the Wall Street Journal. Right? And I was like, sometimes I hadn't really known, but I love telling stories. And I had no interest in ever running a business. That was the last thing on my mind. What I did have an interest in was being free.
Yeah.
And being free and having enough money to be free with. So I had such a yearning for that. And I knew that as a journalists are not that well paid, if you don't know, like unless you're like a Wall Street presenter. Yeah, right. There was always going to be a limit on what you could earn, and there was going to be a limit on, I was feeling like I was a bit stuck, and there was a bit of a ceiling there. I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve, but then I actually just began to think, I want to be free. I want to be able to go on holiday and come back whenever I want. I wanted to buy whatever I want at whatever time. I need to fly in the way that I want to fly. And, I like a bit of comfort and luxury. And I thought, well, why would I limit myself? Then I thought, well, what do I no, what do I have? What's my knowledge? That's the most valuable knowledge that I have. And at that time I said, well, I've worked for all these big publications. I know how to write really well. And the masses could benefit from knowing what a top journalist has learned about writing.
Okay.
And I had this formula. And I thought, why don't I just teach people this formula? Because it doesn't apply to just journalism. It applies to any type of writing and communication. And with that, and I had a few debts as well, which I really didn't know how I was going to pay. And, and I was like, okay, all of these things came together and I thought, let me just create this thing and put this course onto Udemy. It was a free course, the first one I did, The Secret Source of Great Writing. And I just, so 1 hour, I just explained these 4 principles with some examples. I didn't know what would happen, but a few people, just because it was free, a few people just took it, right? And I was sitting there really nervous because it's like, oh, you're waiting for the reviews to come. And you're putting yourself out there for the first time with your face. And all I knew was, I'd read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which had really influenced me and made me go, how can I monetize? How can I make money work for me? Or how can I create an income generating asset? And the thing for me was, obviously I'd write a book. And then someone, because I was talking about all this, a friend of mine said, oh, why don't you do a course? There are some new platforms where they're doing this. That's what I did. I put it on there, tested the water, and then a few people people would left reviews like, oh, I never heard of this guy, but he says he works for the Wall Street Journal, blah, blah, blah. But I'm so glad I took this course because it just changed my whole view of writing in a completely different way, and it's really benefit. I like that. And then people say, then you get the really nice one. This is a gem of a course. Like this is, I'm so glad it's the best 45 minutes you'll ever spend in that kind of stuff, which you really like. It was like a movie poster. And now I knew how to integrate that into my messaging on my course description. So I brought those reviews, packaged them nicely, and showed how, wow, there's this new guy on the scene, but he's really good and, is making waves here. Then more and more people, and then it went to a few hundred people, and then a few thousand people. And eventually, then I thought, now I can produce the bigger course, which gives more of the principles. And that was called Writing with Flair. I think that's the one that you took.
That's the one I've gone,
And eventually I released 2 other courses, one on editing and another one, so more advanced writing one. And I'm proud to say that today I have about 1 million students worldwide on all of those courses, including on LinkedIn and Udemy mainly. And now I'm thinking about starting my own writing community on a different platform, which I'm really excited about as well. So I don't know where this will lead or what is going to happen with this. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole it in advance. What I'm doing is seeing what happens, how this unfolds, and it's a journey for me. And this is, we may come on to this later, but the part of my health journey, which about, has taught me to trust the flow of things. And so without saying this community is going to develop like this, because there are so many things that I can't imagine, great things that it might evolve into something that my limited mind can't foresee. So I have a bit of humility about that life is actually more wise than I am in some ways. And if I allow myself to follow that rather than trying to control that, usually better things happen.
There's so much risk-taking involved in that process.
However, this one's not a risk because, I've reached the point where, I wanted a passive income and I got it for a good 10 years, right? With ups and downs. And I realized, it's run on the strength of the quality of the product. Like I did no marketing. I've done no marketing for any of my courses.
Wow.
And that's my firm belief is that if you create something of such tremendous value and package it well and put it in the right place, it sells itself. Kind of like, so even within the whole universe of Udemy, which is like a e-learning marketplace, eventually, it finds its way it became the best-selling course within the business communications category for a long time. Within the writing category, it still is. Because I just felt that I created something that, and if anyone out there wants to create a course or something. The secret to creating a best-selling course, I think, is to make something that you yourself are so proud of. You pat yourself on the back and say, people are so lucky to have this. Like, if it's that good, and if it's not that good, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And I think, Shani, you make a really good point that you do it and then you let it unfold. Is that when Suraj did the first podcast for this, for me, I was his guinea pig, the first one to just kick it off. That's exactly what I said, is detach yourself from the outcomes.
Right.
Is that sounding like that?
It is, yeah. More and more I'm thinking about that consciously, and that is how I would put it. Like it is hard to detach yourself from outcomes because we become so desperate. But I think it's about, another way of putting it is about enjoying everything that's happening and assuming that it's for your benefit, even if it's something that you don't immediately prefer to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And this is all part of the spiritual growth that I've experienced. Now, this is not how I always was, but there I was just committed to manifesting a particular outcome, which was I was determined.
Got to do it.
Yeah, to have a passive income. That was it. And no matter what, the good thing was, whatever doubts other people would raise, I just ignored them. I said, I don't care. If I die trying to do this, this is what I really want. So first of all, it's important to know what you really want, first of all, because you have to distinguish what you truly want from what you've been kind of trained or taught to think that you should have. Right? Because a lot of people are pursuing goals and desires that really, like I said, with the doctors and stuff, because their parents just push them to be doctors. So they're out of alignment with who they truly are. So this can be a very dangerous thing, because then that can create illnesses, that can create all kinds of other problems down the line. So for me, it was very important to try to understand, what is it that I truly, truly want? And I knew I wanted freedom for whatever was going to happen next. See, as soon as I achieved that freedom and was ready to, make the most of my life, I get struck down with cancer. Not just any cancer, but stage 4.
What age was that?
That was 4 years ago.
Okay, so you're in your late 40s then, older?
You're 51.
Okay.
And I get diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer 4 years ago. And that's terminal, right?
Yes.
That's terminal.
Yes.
By the official definition.
Yeah.
But as you can see, like today, I'm sitting here fine. I don't even feel that I have him. What happens when you've built up everything to live the life of your dreams, and then something like that happens, and the initial thing you think is, isn't life terrible? And suddenly all your goodwill towards life just goes away, and you think it's a tragedy, it's a curse. But then if you keep on, at first I was completely shocked, I was completely frightened, I was completely in despair, right? But through the journey where I decided to go on a healing journey of my own, that went outside and beyond what the medical treatment was, right?
Yes.
And I decided I want to heal my body, my mind, and my spirit. And that was the basic framework I had. And I did everything like with the 4 principles. Like it was like, I like formulas, right? So I was like, okay, how do I heal the body? Because those are the only 3 parts of me that I could see: the body, the mind, and the spirit. So, okay, body, I just decided, okay, from the beginning, cut out anything that's toxic. Cigarettes, I was a smoker, processed food, everything. And I just went purely clean, home-cooked food. Right? That's the first thing I did. And then detoxed my body of anything that could be stuck there. Did that day 1 after the diagnosis.
Okay.
Were you spiritual before?
Good question.
Did this come up?
I was spiritual in the sense that, I had a lot of Buddhist background, right? A kind of like an interest. I wouldn't say Buddhist background. No one fed that to me, but I developed an interest in it. So I was doing meditating and things like that, but I didn't really know what I was doing until this thing forced me into to speed up the whole process of understanding the spiritual side of things. So as I said, the body was the first thing. I knew I had to clean that up. The mind, which was to me was about, your thought process, what you kind of overthinking, stress, emotional issues that have got stuck in you, So I did a whole bunch of work around releasing all of that, traumas and that kind of stuff. That included like some psychology, some, new techniques, so emotional release techniques and other kind of things. I just did everything because I didn't want to leave any stone unturned because I was in such a serious condition.
Sure. Yes.
And finally, the spiritual side of things, which I didn't really understand, but I had heard stories which made me feel that there was something deeper that can also contribute to your healing. And that was in stories like, I read this story called, this book called Dying to Be Me, which was by this I think she was of Indian origin, Anita Murjani, who was dying of cancer, and she was and she actually sort of died in the sense that she was in a hospital and she went into a near-death experience.
Yeah.
In that near-death experience, she had a vision of her father, who her deceased father, who said, "Listen, Anita, you have this cancer because you are not living your life. You are living the life that is expected of you by others." So it relates back to what we're saying about this misalignment. She then decided to come back to her body, she says, and she wakes up in the hospital and the doctor saying, "Oh wow, you died for a second." And she says, "It's okay. The cancer's going to go away. I know it is because I know what caused it." It's a famous book, best-selling book. And she said, the doctor said, "No, you can't leave. Don't be silly." And she said, "It's okay. Okay, you can take the test, but I know it's going to go away." And sure enough, within a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, everything was gone. So I'd read that at the beginning and I thought, there's another dimension that we can explore here. So we got the body, we got the mind, we can do all that, but what is this? But there was not really a technique. I was not going to I'm not going to have a near-death experience like that easily. And who knows, it may not work. So then I started to kind of keep my eyes open. So now I'm looking for learning about this.
What I found is that there's different self-care methods that work differently for different people, right? Some people, meditation doesn't work, but maybe waking up at 5 a.m. and exercising allows them to set their mind.
Well, so it's very individual, as you say. So what happened with me was I was open to this possibility of learning of this, and someone sends me this video of this guy from America who has healed himself from paraplegia. Completely himself. He said he was going to do it within 3 months. He was completely paralyzed. They said, "You're never going to get better." And he was literally couldn't move, just lying there flat. And his name was, and I saw this interview with him where he was fine and he was his name was RJ Spinner. And he was like, Spina. He was explaining how he did it. So in other words, there was this potential to actually consciously put your spine back together. So if that was possible, I thought, why wouldn't it be possible to heal cancer? Why wouldn't it be? So because I was willing to consider. Now, I'm not saying I've come back and saying, "Oh, you can do this," because I can't prove that.
No.
But what I can do is say that I put everything into motion. I wasn't going to hold back on anything. So I contacted this guy and I said to him, "Can we have some consultations?"
Yes.
And I was blown away by his teachings. And he was explaining to me, he wrote this book called Supercharged Self-Healing, which explains, how he did this. And I thought, well, this could apply. So I started to implement those techniques as well. And so far, so good. I've been clear of cancer for the past 2 years. And I feel confident about that. I'm not complacent, but I am confident about that. I still check. And I'm not making any grand claims for anybody else. But as you said, it's very individual. But for me, it feels like this has had a profound impact. And when you called me to do this interview, I was in Hawaii. I was with him. I was with him.
Right.
I was with him on a spiritual retreat. Because he explained it from a spiritual perspective, or what he calls a metaphysical perspective. So then you start to understand how you can use your intention to make changes within your body.
Do you think it's the power of thought and manifestation?
It is kind of manifestation, but it's beyond thought. So it's a bit of another discussion, but it's not like positive thinking, and it's not like, because that can become very strenuous and kind of ultimately futile in many cases, in my experience. What this is knowing the power of desire and intention to create changes. So it's not at the level of thought, but it's at the level of desire and intention. And it's knowing how to how to operate from that kind of level. Now, to get to that kind of level, you have to learn how to come out of what he would call lower consciousness mentality, where thinking takes place. So it's actually outside of the realm of thinking. So what you do is you train yourself to leave thinking behind almost. And then you enter the realm of power that doesn't exist in the thought realm. So I know it's like a big topic here, but I just want to throw it out there.
It's interesting.
And for what it's worth, this is what stopped me writing my book on writing, because now I started writing this book about the cancer journey, because I want to share this just as information in the form of a memoir, a story where I show my journey of kind of understanding these levels of healing. And, you know, it's going to be called Ascending Cancer. And it's, I'm very involved in writing that at the moment.
It's really interesting. We'll go into it in this podcast, because I think we might need another one. Another one on that. Yeah.
Your spiritual journey of the mind, body, and soul is really interesting. I guess my question is, what do you do every day to continue that journey of spiritualism? You might not look yourself in a mirror and, you know, say positive affirmations, but what does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So you mentioned affirmations. Now, those can be really, really useful. I mean, I call them mantras. So one of the mantras that I used early on was the mantra, I am healed. Present tense, right? And this was a fascinating experience, because when RJ, the guy, told me, he said, do that and just to see what happens, right? See what your experience is. And I sat there, and this was when I really thought I was dying. Like I wasn't expecting anything to happen. So I would sit down and say, okay, let me just do it, because he seems to have some knowledge of this. And I would sit there going, I am healed. 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 And I kept repeating that with kind of like, you know, like trying to feel the truth of that. But obviously thinking, I don't know if it's true. Like, I mean, how do I know that's true? So so now you start having this battle with your ego mind, which says, yeah, but why are you saying this? Like, so this is why a lot of mantras and affirmations fail, because if you haven't deleted the doubt,
old stuff,
the old stuff, it just conflicts with it. So I was aware of this. So I was like, okay, I am healed. I was like, ignore this voice. Ignore this voice that says, yeah, but why are you saying something that you don't know is true? And to shut it up, I actually said to this ego mind, I said, look, I'm not making a statement of fact. I'm issuing a command. I am healed. Then it silenced that voice for a while. Because I'm not, because it said, you don't know if it's true. I said, I'm just saying, I am healed as a command. I am healed. I am healed. I am healed. Now, I kept repeating that. Now, what interesting thing happened after about 20 minutes, it became, am I healed? So for the first time, I was like, well, I'm saying this, but maybe, I mean, do I know that I'm not? Right? How do I know that I'm not? So this kind of question arose within me. So something shifted. I said, okay, for the first time I actually felt, okay, don't get carried away, Shani. You know, you don't know, and then the mind comes back in again. And I go, okay, I'm healed. I mean, and then after a while, actually, for the first time, I start to feel good saying, even if it's not true, at least it feels good, feeling good. It feels good to even imagine that.
So that mind, body, soul connection started to kick in.
Now, here was the funny thing. I did this for longer, and I thought, wow. And then at some point I start to feel I am healed. I feel tangibly that I am healed. But then I go, but I don't know that, but I feel it. So now I go, okay, I feel healed, but I don't really know, right? So the doubt is there and the feeling is there and everything. And I'm like completely like, okay, but it felt good. So I call the guy the next time and I have my second consult with him. And he says, what happened? And I told him that story. I said, this is what happened. I said, I felt like I was healed even at one point, but hey, but you know, obviously I don't know that. I mean, you know, the last scan I had said, this or whatever. And he goes, Shani, that's very interesting. You say you had the tangible experience that you are healed and then you doubted it. I said, yeah. He said, why do you trust the doubt more than you trust the tangible feeling that you are healed? And I never thought of that question.
So repeat that. I think that's important. We'll just repeat that slowly again.
He said, Shani, you had the tangible experience that you are healed, you're telling me, and then you doubted it. Why do you trust the doubt more than you trust the tangible feeling that you are healed?
And I think that statement could go to any kind of application in life, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And that's why I have to write this book, because I mean, that's just one, but I can tell you so many moments of recognition of like different ways of understanding this. One of my friends in London was like, when I first got it and I called it, I was going, look, I've got a terrible situation here, got colon cancer spread to the liver. And, they're saying it's like, there's like, it could be as little as 18 months to live, right? That kind of stuff. And I said, and I started reeling out these statistics about, the 15% chance of like living more than 5 years or whatever. And he was like, Isha Shani, forget your statistics. He said, there's only one statistic that matters. What's that? You are one of one. That's the only statistic you need to worry about.
Not the 100 people that survived or didn't survive.
Yeah, you are one of one, and you are going to try to heal. That's it. So, and then I recognized I'm on a healing journey. That was another big step. I realized, okay, whatever happens, I don't know, right? I don't know what's going to happen. Even now, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm on a healing journey. And just viewing it like that takes all that pain away from it, because I'm going to keep doing whatever I need to heal on all these levels, right? And like that, and there's so many things I could say. It's a fascinating thing. Like people would say, okay, look, you're having false hope. You're having false hope. You're giving yourself false hope by, thinking this way. What if you are?
You're kind of referring to skeptics.
Right, exactly. But it started to astound me, because I would think about all this stuff that people are saying, right? But people would say, don't give false hope, don't give false hope, And I would think, they say, well, wait a minute. First of all, I don't know it's false, but I'd rather have false hope than false hopelessness, which is what a lot of people are encouraged, because they're afraid that if they have hope and they're wrong, right, that is somehow going to be worse. But when I reflected on that, no, if I thought I'm going to recover, and then at the end, and then in 6 months' time I realize I'm not, then I have lived those 6 months well.
Yeah, exactly, without the doubt.
So I'm very much for hope and create, but more than hope, intention and commitment to healing. And that's all I'm going to do. So I can't guarantee a result for myself or anybody, but I can guarantee my intention. But I just want to preface this and say that what I'm saying here is just my individual journey. And I'm not making any recommendations as to how anyone else should handle this, because that's between them and their doctor and their families and everything. But what I can do is just say what I did and what has worked for me. And, I just want to make it clear, this is no way a generalization of what other people should do. And I trust my intuition as well. Like, I think, is this treatment the right one for me? And I didn't know it. Like, I got to the stage where I would kind of feel like my body wouldn't be able to handle that. And I would feel pretty sure about that. And then I could pick and choose, like, with the advice of my oncologist, and with the advice of the surgeons and the doctors and everything. I was lucky that I had very, very experienced and open-minded doctors too.
A massive thank you to Shani for joining us on the Migrant Mentor. If you'd like to learn more about Shani's courses or join his community or listen to his podcast, The Alchemy of Writing, you can visit his website at shaniraja.com. That's SHANIRAJA.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Migrant Mentor.